The rest of your life can be the best of your life. You've heard that. I've heard it too. That's the theme of a Michael Gott English event in Ukraine when we get students together and say to them, the rest of your life can be the best of your life. But that's true for me and you as well. The rest of my life can be the best of my life. And God's proven that. He's got plans for us. We don't reach a point as long as we're living. But He says, well, you can just sit down now. I have nothing more for you. Now, if you're seeking after Him, He's got something for you. Well, I've been telling you a story, and I want to bring it to an end of telling you, bring you up to now in 24 years in a very few minutes. Last week, I talked to you about living by faith and going to the Northwest Baptist Convention. Those years in Portland, Vancouver, 10 years working for the Northwest Baptist Convention was such a tremendous time for me, an education. I learned so much about the diversity of Baptists in America, about worship and how different we are in so many ways. But at the same time, it helped me to find the common ground, the things that did not change from church to church to church in our need to worship God. Well, had a great time there, experienced, again, so much education that I gained from being there. I had doors open to me to teach around the United States, conferences in different states and different situations. And it was a blessing to me. And after 10 years, about 2006, God was really saying to me, you know, you've been here for 10 years, not working week in, week out in the local church, and you're telling people how to do it, trying to help them do it. Bobby, it's time for you to go back to the local church and get your feet wet again. Well, God opened the door, and I came back to the Spokane area with my dear brother, Pastor Terry Little, and spent 5 more years working in the local church. Well, during that 10 years with Northwest Baptist, I had something happen in 1999. Michael Gott, whom I had known since about 1980. Michael, many of you know, but if you don't, Michael is just a godly, passionate evangelist that God has been using and continues to use in these days. Most of his work being in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. But he and his wife Jan called Sharon and I, and they said, you are to go with us to Poland. Poland? Why would I want to go to Poland? I didn't want to go to Poland. It's 1999. I'm almost 50 years old. So at age 50, instead of things winding down, here's a new challenge, a new opportunity. Well, what shall we do with this? I didn't want to go. But I was studying at the time, a study I encourage all believers to read and study, Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. And in that study, he talks about joining God where He's at work. Well, I couldn't say no. I wanted to, but I couldn't say no because I was in this study and it was obvious to me God was at work. So we went to Poland, had a great time actually. I remember sitting across the table from my students, helping them with the English, but realizing what was making a difference to them was the fact that I had something in my life. I had joy, I had peace, I had hope. I had Jesus Christ. And I sat there and realized this is maybe the most valuable thing that I've ever done in my life. I'm being Jesus to people who've never seen Him. It was a great experience. We went home, and we actually went back to Poland again a couple of years later. Well, we got back into our routine, but God had started something. And in 2008, I finally, again reluctantly really, went to Ukraine with Michael and Jan and one of their English teams. Well, it became a yearly part of our life. I shared with you back when I was sharing about surrender, about a moment in 2011 when God was saying to me, Bobby, I have more for you in Ukraine than you're being able to do coming one time a year. So in 2011, that's when we said, okay, God, here we are. Now I'm 60. 10 more years has passed. Can really the rest of my life be the best of my life? And in 2011, I'm 60 years old, and God says, follow me into Ukraine. Well, I've told you much of that story. I left my church position back in Spokane at age 60 and started going to Ukraine with Michael and Jan every time I could. And God tremendously opened doors, even for Sharon, my wife, in exposing her to ministry to visually handicapped people in Ukraine. And she got involved in that ministry. And I, not only with individual churches, finding ways to help young people with English and building relationships, working with those churches, but God opened a door for me to become affiliated with Ukrainian Baptist Theological Seminary in Lviv. Told you about that. The worship classes that I recorded and some of you have watched were for that seminary, and that seminary has made a tremendous difference in my life in my 60s. Well, COVID has interfered greatly with all of our lives, and although we could get around right now and be very depressed at times. We lost a friend today. We learned of a friend who's passed away from COVID from our church back in Texas that we left in 1986. We could get discouraged. We're cut off perhaps from being able to do the things that we feel we need to do or want to do because of this pandemic. But God's not through. God's at work. He hasn't changed. The rest of my life can still be the best of my life. Yes, we hope to go back to Ukraine soon. We hope to be there next year. Will we be able to? Only God knows. But I still know the rest of my life can be the best of my life. So guess what God's doing? I'm almost 70 now. And you know what God's about to do? In November, God's opened the door for this man, seeking to follow and serve as long as he gives me breath. God is allowing me to go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the Ukrainian Baptist Theological Seminary to teach students for a weekend. Well, Ukraine now has come to me in Pennsylvania, and we're surrounded by Ukrainians and Russians and Slavic people in Spokane. So God's not through. A new venture has opened for me to go to Pennsylvania in November. The rest of my life has certainly been the best of my life. Each day sweeter. No, I make a mess of things. I'm a failure in so many ways. And my church here has been so supportive of the things that we've done after we stepped down from our full-time position, which has been, well, it'll soon be, it's been over 9 years, and it'll be almost 10 years. And we've spent a lot of time in Ukraine and Hungary and Poland and those three countries, and thankful for every moment. And we're going back if God allows. But if He doesn't, God has something else. Is it ministry to Ukrainians in America? I don't know. But He knows. He's in control. And one day, at any moment, He's coming for the church. And then, after a time, Jesus is going to rule and reign on this earth in His kingdom. And I have the best of my life ahead because it's all in Jesus Christ. So I pray for you today, my friends, my family, my students that I've had. Trust God and let the rest of your life be the best of your life. Thank you, Michael and Jan, for allowing God to use you in my life to get me out of my comfort zone in this country and get me to step to follow you and go with you into Eastern Europe and allow God to do such a work in my life. And I continue to pray for Michael and Jan. Pray for them as they're making efforts to be back in Ukraine within the next few weeks. So pray for them as they continue. The fight is on, people. The trumpet sound is ringing out. The cry to arms is heard afar and near. The Lord of hosts is marching on to victory. The triumph of our Christ will soon appear. Yeah, it's an old gospel song. We're in a spiritual battle, but we win. trust God. The rest of your life can be the best of your life.